Mauritius campaign, October 1809. In our last episode, we established that during the month of October, at least the first half, all this patrolling, all this rolling and hating that the British vessels did led to precisely one brush with the Frenchness. And that happened right here. The Leopard thought it was going to peel around and come back this way, go back to Rodrigues, drink some rum, have a good time. Instead, they caught sight of a sail on the horizon where there ought to have been a sail. They set off in hot pursuit. The little rectangle you see there, but that's the size of a war game table. So you can see there's a whole lot of room for these boats to miss each other, but they kind of almost sort of bumped into each other here, and maybe they won't bump into each other at all. That's what we're going to establish later. But before we get into that, I do want to point out a couple of little things. It turns out I found a source that indicated that the HMS Otter is the same as the French ship the Revenant. That the Revenant got captured and rechristened the Otter. So, whoopsie. I've crossed that off the campaign for now. Maybe it'll come on later, so I haven't completely destroyed it and erased it all. But since it's the same ship and it hasn't been captured, I'm just gonna, and I feel a little bit justified in that because it does keep things a little balanced here. Remember that what happened last time? One of these ships really took a beating, took it on the chin. From my notes, it says that the Revenant captured a supply vessel. Yeah, we'll get to that. The Creole captured a supply vessel, but that vessel was destroyed. And then what else? Somebody else, one of these ships, the Ceylon captured the Boulogne on the 20th of July. So the Boulogne is essentially off the table as well. It may come back on as a British vessel, but here in October, that's not the case. All right, just kind of by the by. Now, one of the things that we established last time, I threw down a great big honking map. It looked a little, it was actually a 2-pager, and it looked a little something like, I'm going to have to zoom out here, aren't I? So here's our prize, and here's the Caroline, and on this other page over here, we got the Leopard. So this is the size of two 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, and if you don't believe me, I can put a measuring device right there. In this case, each centimeter, the scale here is 1 centimeter is 1 kilometer. And 30 kilometers is the distance you have. So I said, all right, well, let's put the prize down here. And the Leopard, and it's an East India Trading Company ship. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to keep calling it the prize because it's the reason why the Caroline and the Leopard may come to grips here. The Leopard, if you will, is cruising along on October 8th, and way up in the crow's nest, one of the young lads with the good eyes says, ahoy, sail off the, which way is the Leopard is off the bow. They're basically pointed straight for it. So they crack on all speed. Let's go chase it down. Let's go see what it's all about. Of course, the prize is likely to notice a sail on the horizon at about the same time, so maybe they pick up the pace. A couple of other things we established. The wind is out of the northeast, right? So that's northeast, and if you're more comfortable with the actual north, north is going to look something like that. Okay, so there's due north. I was looking at this and I thought, okay, so if we take a look at our area map, our campaign map, and here the scale is 1 centimeter. We'll go ahead and zoom back down in so that y'all can really feast your peeps on that. So there you go. 1 centimeter is 50 kilometers, and we are about 3 centimeters away from Mahaborg or Grandport, if you will. There's your 3. Okay, so now you can see it. Frabjous day. And that means if we take a look at this guy, 100, each of these pieces of paper is 30. That's 5 pieces of paper away. A piece of standard American paper is about 28 centimeters across. So it's going to take us a whole lot of papers to get the prize down to safety. And I thought, well, that's terrible. That's a waste of paper. I love the environment. I'm quite the environmentalist. I'm quite the green meanie. So I thought, wait a minute, what am I doing? Why don't I just shrink this down a little bit? Why don't I dump this onto a regular, normal, average, everyday 8.5 by 11 piece of paper? What's it going to look like? So keeping the geometry all the same, the Leopard now is in the upper right-hand corner. Now in this case, I've tilted things a little bit, right? I've shifted things. So that's north. The wind is out of the northeast, so it's coming basically like straight down the map. I know it's a little off to the side. Maybe it's like northeast based, whatever. The important thing is that I've shrunk the scale down to 1, or is it blown up the scale? Whatever. Every centimeter is now 2 kilometers. So I can fit both the Leopard and the prize on the same ship. So the Leopard says, well, I can kind of see which way this fella's going. I'm going to set off on a hot pursuit. The way that this is going to work, we'll zoom in when they get close enough. But we have 3 different vessels that are moving here. The Caroline can communicate with the prize. After all, they're only separated by about 6 kilometers. Maybe the prize fires a gun to get their attention. Hey, stupids, there's somebody after us. So we got to take a look at how the rules work on this scale. So essentially what we've done is we put together a potential encounter at the Grand Strategic. What is old? And we're using, of course, just to remind you, we're using Heart of Oak by John Williams from the world of Privateers and Gentlemen. Good recommendation. Maybe I should check out the role-playing game that's set in the same world. I don't know if it's good for solo. Maybe later. Point being, to drag this back around to where he calls that the strategic map, this one right here. And we've moved on from the strategic. We zoomed in now, and we're doing the grand tactical scale, right? So 1 turn equals half an hour. Movements are made on graph paper in millimeters. Well, okay, it's actually, in millimeters, 10 millimeters is a centimeter, which represents 1 kilometer. Well, we're going to have 10 millimeters, which is 1 centimeter, represent 2 kilometers. And so that means we got to deal with our speeds. And the Leopard is he's only got it broken down. John's got us here. It's just sail of the line, frigates, convoy. Is this a convoy? I got 2 boats. I don't think it is. I think that we can assume that the East India Trading Company vessel, maybe it's heavily laden. Maybe it wasn't quite. Well, no, it would have been if it was sailing around the Bay of Bombay. Regardless, I'm going to say that moves at the same speed as the sail of the line. And just to kind of further justify that decision, here on the tactical movement scale, it's got the sailing chart for the ships of the line. It's got 1st through 4th rate. Okay. And the Leopard, as I said, is a 50-gun vessel. So he's not the biggest. The Raisonnable is the biggest in the theater. But as a 4th rate vessel, if a rate 4th, I say 4th rated, 4th rate. It always sounds weird to me. Anyway, it's going to be sailing. The important thing is that all these vessels are average. In our last video, we determined that some of the vessels here were damaged. So, for example, if we had a scenario with the Venus, well, we would call that a hooker. Old Venus would be a hooker, which means not great. And they're not cracked because we're still early in the conflict. So the Leopard can move at 18 millimeters per turn. Oh, wait, we doubled up. So he's only going to move 9 millimeters a turn. You got to cut these in half because we zoomed in a little bit further. The frigate who is in pursuit can move 15, right? The Caroline is a smaller vessel. The Caroline is a 40-gun frigate. So 50 versus 40. However, so that's going to give the French a little bit of an advantage. And of course, they kind of do have the weather gauge. But that's what's really fascinating about this, is that we have an opportunity here where, with the wind coming out of this kind of northern direction and the vessels kind of coming at each other, both from the same direction, nobody really has the weather gauge. So nobody has a real strong advantage. So how, the question becomes, will the Leopard close with a prize? And fortunately for us, John gives us the answer in the form of a special tactical movement called cracking on. And he says as much right here. Movement will be exactly as in strategic, again with the possibility of increasing sail by 10 or 20%, rolling every turn for possible damage. Roll for weather changes every half-hour turn. All right, so we got to make 2 rolls every turn. And what exactly is this all about? Well, in the strategic section, he says you can bump your speed up by 10%. So from 9 to 10, all right, that could be okay. That'll work for us, at least for a little while. Now remember, at the start of the action, the good ship Leopard doesn't know who this ship is. They're just going to get close enough. So what we're going to have them do is, I've put marks here. I hope you can see them. This is each half hour of sailing. And I just picked 10 a.m. in the morning, 10 o'clock in the a.m. arbitrarily so that we have a starting time. And so I said, well, what's the situation going to look like after 5 hours? So the Leopard, cracking on, is going to be able to close to, well, wait a minute, but he's not closing at all, is he? So I swung around. Well, this is if he's not cracking on. This is if he is. So that's not, I mean, it's only after 5 hours, it's only 1 centimeter difference. But in that time, because the prize doesn't want to take that same risk, it knows it's got a protector. After 5 hours, they will close the distance from 30 to 24 kilometers. Okay. Now the Caroline gets word from the prize, hey, there's a ship. And as they get closer, the Caroline decides to play it a little cagey. So again, the prize, this is 9 millimeters difference. And after 5 hours, the prize will wind up here. But the Caroline says, I'm going to stay out of sight. I'm going to lurk here. See how it's about 15, just over the horizon. That 30 kilometers, that's your sight line. And we're going to wait. So after 5 hours, our 3 vessels are here. And the Leopard is going to have to roll 10 times. Now, the good news for them is that they are a good crew. The ship itself is cracked, but if you take a look at what the risk here is, by speeding up, there's a chance every turn that you are, and here it is, mast falling. If a ship is moving at the asterisk rate, all right, or in the case of our strategic movement, our grand tactical movement, we've bumped our speed up by 10%. There's a 10% chance of mast falling. But we're going to call it a +5 with a good crew. So we have a 1 in 20 chance every turn that a mast falls. And if it does, then we have to roll on this table here. The wind is at a 4. So we're going to, oh, that's mast falling too. That's not it. There's a chart in here for what happens when the mast falls. You got to dig a little deep for this one. It's in the critical hit results. For ships of the line, you got to roll deep percentile to figure out which one fell. Could have been the foremast, the mainmast, the mizzenmast, or maybe even the bowsprit. For 2-masted vessels, could be the mainmast, foremast, or the bowsprit. And then, of course, single-masted. It's going to be either the mainmast or the bowsprit. The bowsprit is this little guy pointing out right there. Now, why does that matter? It's a good question. I'm glad I asked it, because there's another little chart that explains for a 3-masted ship, if you lose your mainmast, you cut your movement by half. Now, why would that be important? First of all, because it will affect what happens after that mast falls. The only one that can fall is the Leopard. And if that's the case, then when the Caroline comes sniffing around to find out who this is lurking after a prize, I mean, the prize is going to get away. But also it means that the Caroline can decide whether to engage or not, this crippled British vessel. Maybe she doesn't. She says, look, I'm just trying to get my loot back to the port so she can just sail on her way. And when this happens, probably doesn't matter, so we'll just roll for all 10 of them. But each time we do, we also need to check for a change in the weather. So 10 times, and it's actually every turn. We got to find out if the weather changes. This could get a little tedious, so I might wind up doing it off table a little bit. But there is, as I mentioned, a table. I should say I might roll for off camera. There's only a 3% chance every turn. And even if that happens, then it's a possible weather change, right? And so if there is a weather change, then you roll here and you go, oh, maybe there's a change in barometer. And then maybe it goes up and maybe it rises or falls and maybe the wind veers and it gets a little complicated. So if that happens during the course of the day, we'll take a look at it. But I think for now, the smart play is just go ahead and roll and see how far the Leopard makes it, because I only need a 5% chance. That's just a D20. So I could just roll this 10 times and show you. I get a 20. Obviously, I'm looking for the critical fail. That's 3, 4, a 5, a 6, 7, 8, 9. And do we get it on number 10? We do not. So after 10 turns, the Leopard says, ooh, given how slow that fella's going, let's ease up. We're going to wind up right here. And as I said, we're 24 miles from the Caroline. But I still need to check to see, hey, did we have a weather change? And it's probably no surprise that I didn't have any weather change. Just take my word for it, okay? And that's where the rest of this stuff. So ignore everything below my hand, right? The Caroline is still lurking over the curvature of the Earth. Sorry, flat Earth bros. We are curvature respecters here. The Leopard now changes course. So he was coming this way. He's gonna dial just like a point or two closer. So after 10 hours, and this time, here I can show you 45. This is the 90 instead of 10 centimeters. So now after another 5 hours, the night falls. And this is where the 10 a.m. comes into play. It's 8 p.m. and night has fallen. Remember, it's October, so the days are getting shorter. Or maybe they're getting longer because I think we're in the southern hemisphere. I don't remember. I should probably check that. At any rate, we're now just a scant 10 kilometers from the Caroline. From, where is it? We are a scant 14 kilometers from the prize, but the Caroline has shifted to protect her charge. We're only 10 kilometers from the Caroline. And this is where, again, the Caroline says, okay, now that we're getting closer, I need to get in there. I need to start sheepdogging. So she changes her direction, and she winds up but she's still a little upwind. She wants to maintain upwind of the Leopard. The Leopard can cut across, but of course we have a long way to go. And what I did is I wrote down right here, this is the mark, this line right here. It's 100 kilometers from here to get the prize to safety. I said, all right, so now it's nighttime. And what happens here? This is where, and again, we've all seen the movies, this is where if you are afraid of a much larger vessel with thicker oak and bigger guns, you slip away in the darkness. Of course, the Leopard knows where the prize is going. The Caroline knows, everybody knows where the prize is going. The only question is, how much variation are you going to put on your heading so that you're still getting closer, but maybe you wake up a little further away than you'd like from port, but you're a lot further away from the Leopard than he would like. These are the trade-offs. And so, again, it's just a little mini game. And what I found is that after 10 hours of nightfall, we move for another 10 hours. I haven't checked the weather yet. I'll do that here momentarily. This is what the situation looks like at 6 a.m. The Caroline is maintaining distance and, what would you call it? Distance and direction from the prize. Maybe falls off just a little bit. 6 kilometers when the sun finally rises. And the Leopard wakes, delighted to find that they are a scant 8 kilometers away. Now, just to show you, at the bottom of this page, we are 50 kilometers to safety. And as the day rolls on, the wind speed, I should point out, was at 3. And let me make just a little note of that right here. Wind equals, no, I put it at 4. Because 0 is nothing, 1 is nothing, 2 is where there's 1 is scant breezes, 2 is light breezes, and then 3 and 4 are normal. When you get up into the 5, 6, 7, that's pretty strong breezes. So I still need to check to see if the weather changed overnight. I got to roll a bunch more dice, looking for a 0-3, right? And honestly, I could probably roll these both. We'll call this one the first and the second one. So that's 2-3. And unless I get a 0, it's not going to happen. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I didn't get any zeros, right? 10, 11, let's call it 12. I got to do 10 hours for yesterday. So I got to do this 4 more times. I get a 6 and a 2. Boy, I'm just not getting any zeros, am I? Bum. Are there any zeros on here? I feel like there should be a 0 on here. What am I missing? There it is. Look, just to show you guys, I'm not using loaded dice. Got the zeros, didn't get any. So the weather is still wind, same direction. Barometer's fine, pretty standard. And what that means is, starting at 6 a.m., the prize is going to keep on trucking, and the Caroline is going to pick up pace. Remember, the Caroline can move 15 kilometers, or 15 millimeters, I should say, or 3 kilometers every half an hour. And you boat guys will have to tell me if that seems reasonable. So at 15, and they can kind of put on sail or take off sail, and they get to meet. So they get to determine. What that means is that at 8:45, so this is 6 a.m., the Leopard is here, still closing, and they're hoping to meet up with their prize somewhere around right here. Instead, they realize the Caroline is coming, and that's okay with the Leopard. Remember, the Leopard outguns the Caroline. The Caroline, what they really want to do is slow the Leopard down enough for the prize to get away. And that's why what winds up happening is, provided there isn't a weather change at 1, 2, 3, 4. Man. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then as they enter the table, 6. So the weather is still coming from the same direction at the same speed. And now our two vessels will be entering the table here and here. And we have ourselves a little scenario. And they'll be separated by, we can measure it out here, and we can zoom it just, see, there's 5. That's 1 kilometer. If we decide to go with the Heart of Oak, then the tactical movement scale is going to be, drum roll please, at the tactical scale, 1 meter equals 1 millimeter. Okay, so that means 1,000 millimeters. Well, there's 300 of them right there. So a table 3 feet across. Wait, what did I say? I said this is a half. That's 1 kilometer across. So a 3-foot table will give me a box that looks about this big. And at about 8:45, the action starts with these two vessels coming onto the table. Of course, the prize is going to continue trundling along. And absent this little spot right here, this is where the Leopard would have come within, a hailing distance, if you will, probably 3/4 of a kilometer of the prize, had the Caroline not sought to intervene. So now the question becomes, how do we play out this battle? What is the Leopard going to do now that they have a French vessel under their guns? And this really highlights the problem that you have with, I probably should have led with this now that I think about it. I feel bad for all those dopes that don't listen to the whole episode. You guys are really something special. You are going to, and are you going to pick up some knowledge? One of the big reasons, in my humble estimation, that naval wargaming isn't quite as popular as land-based wargaming is exactly this process that we've gone through over the course of 3 episodes. It's longer and harder to get a natural and organic scenario that you can throw down on the table. When you have a nice, large, open, featureless ocean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles with nothing going on, it makes it really hard to come up with a scenario that is reasonably balanced, in which a vessel realizes that it wants to contend with another vessel. Why? Why are these two ships fighting? And we've played a pretty good chunk of games using something like Fighting Sail, something like Bilge, Blood, and Steel. Blood, Bilge, and Iron Balls. And it's always, whenever we have a 1v1, the question is, why are they doing this? Why do they have this slugfest? Well, here, we've laid that out. We've done the geometry, we've done the heavy lifting, and we have a reason that these two vessels want to slug it out. The British just want to get the convoy, they just want to bust up that trading vessel. They want to recapture it for their own purposes, if they can capture it. So we actually have a second scenario. If they can beat up and take over the Caroline, we'll have to figure out how long that takes. Because then, take a look. If that's tabletop scenario, so here we are at 8:45. This is where, right there, that's where the prize is at 8:45. So if the Leopard can completely disable the Caroline, and we'll zoom on in there, then they have the option of taking the Caroline or continuing to sail down and taking the prize. The prize may be a bigger prize financially, except that removing the Caroline from the battlefield will pay huge dividends later on. So we got to remember that when we play out this tabletop scenario. And I think for this one, we will be fine to use Blood, Bilge, and Iron Balls. I know I said, well, we zoom in, but the key thing that we've done here is we've taken a real world scenario. We've given each of these captains something other than sink or capture the other ship. The Caroline might want to just delay the Leopard long enough. If it could just slow him down long enough for the prize to build up a lead. Remember, the Leopard only gains 1 millimeter every turn. So if we can delay him for an hour, Maybe in our tabletop game, the Caroline is playing cat and mouse. It says, hey, I'm going to lure you around here. Do you want to come over here? And maybe the leopard says, yeah, you know what? No, I'm going to try to catch this guy. So it's not just necessarily a shootout. We still have a delightful little cat and mouse game we can play right there on the table. What's that going to look like? Well, you'll have to tune in next week to find out. Until then, I'm praying for you.